Hey, Steve Magnante here at High-Octane Classics in Auburn, Massachusetts with the 1973 Plymouth Cuda 340. Now, the Cuda was the performance model of the Barracuda, which could be had with a slant 6 from 1970 through 1972, but they were strictly V8 powered for 73 and 4, the final 2 years of production. That meant either a 318 or the 340. Now the VIN on this one has an H in the 5th spot, so it's definitely born a 340 car. A Cuda as well, BP or BS23 for Barracuda, Cuda. And the H is, of course, the 340 motor. And it was an option, not a lot of money, but with that said, 1973 was the next to last year for the Plymouth Barracuda e-body. And of the 19,281 Barracudas built in 1973, only 6,538, or about 30%, were Cuda 340s. So the market had spoken, as had the insurance industry, where they penalized younger buyers of muscle cars and made them pay more. In some cases, you paid as much for your insurance as you did your car payment every month. So with that said, the party was almost over. But again, 1973, final year for the 340 engine. 1974 brought the 360 engine as the hot dog engine for the Barracuda lineup, or the Cuda lineup. So this one here, great example of the breed, Plum Crazy Purple. It's kind of a work in process. The folks at High-Octane Classics are still finessing this one to make it 10/10ths. And with that said, we'll take a look around this one and see what we can find. And coming here to the hood, it's kind of interesting. The Barracuda was new in 1964 as an A-body, but by 1970, it shared its bones with the Dodge Challenger and the E-body platform. And in 1970, Plymouth launched the Barracuda with this amazing magazine ad right here. It says, "Hello, new people. We have a new car for you." And there it is, the Hemi Cuda with a tie saying, "Hello, I'm here, I'm new." The shaker hood, the elastomeric bumper on the front. And this is the pinnacle of the Hemi Cuda. The e-body party was in full swing in 1970. Sales were about, I think, I don't know, 48,000, 84, something like that, 48,000 units in 1970 when it was a new thing. One thing that's often overlooked is the fact that the Barracuda and the Cuda ride on a 108-inch wheelbase, which is 2 inches shorter than the e-body Challenger from Dodge. And that's all back here. 110-inch wheelbase on the Challenger, 108-inch wheelbase on the Barracuda. So if you're riding in the back seat of one of these things, make sure it's in a Challenger. It's a little bit longer if you have in the back for long-legged people. So let's open the hood and see what that 340 looks like. And one thing that was new for 1972 and 3 was the front bumpers were pushed away from the metal of the body a little bit further. You can see it mostly on the back and the front. Little fillers were made, these guys here. And that was part of the federal impact safety standards to prevent damage to the front bumpers. And the insurance companies like that because less damage to plastic grills, less money to pay out. There you have it. And it wasn't as graceful as the earlier Barracudas, but again, it was just part of the federal intrusion into automobile design. Safety first, folks. And these, by the way, are not functional. Just like the Pontiac Trans Am of this period of time, they do one thing. They help to sell Cudas. They're blocked off, but they look mean, the double bubble hood. In fact, this same hood scheme has been adopted recently onto the Dodge Challenger, very same theme with the double bumps. They're not functional either. But with that said, let's look underneath and see what we find. And there it is, the 340. And again, this is a work in progress. The folks at High-Octane will be finessing this one to bring it to 10/10ths, more appealing under the hood. There's lots to work with. That's the 340 engine right there. It has a cast iron intake, which is factory issue. Some add-on tube steel headers, nothing wrong with that. This one is a D34 Torque Flight automatic car, so that's cool, nothing wrong with that. The 727 Torque Flight is a tough transmission. You could also get these with a 4-speed manual, but this one was born in automatic. Had an Edelbrock 4-barrel carburetor right there. They're simple to tune, trouble-free. Power disc brakes up front, standard fare on the Cuda. And in 1970 and 71, a base Barracuda could be had with drum brakes up front, which is kind of crazy. But the Cuda, the performance model, automatically came with discs up front, power discs in this case here. And this one does have power steering as well, which was an optional feature. And just a nice presentation under the hood. And of course, the e-body was 1970 through 1974, a brief 4-year stint of well, supremacy, if you will. Now, the pony car marketplace by 1970 was saturated. The AMC Javelin was in there swinging. The Cougar was in there. The Mustang was all new. Well, the Camaro was all new for 1970. And of course, the Mustang was just about to shrink down in 1974 to an even smaller vehicle, better suited to the times, honestly. But again, next to the last year for the mighty Cuda 340. Let's look inside and see what we can learn. Now, of course, like all Cudas and Barracudas, high back bucket seats were standard fare. And here's the center console, standard issue on the Cuda. And we see right here, this is the torque flight transmission controller. And it says here slapstick. What that means is you could just bump this thing and it would go from gear to gear, like a manual valve body, sort of. It would upshift at about 4,000 RPM. You hit the shift handle right there and slapstick. It's not a Laurel and Hardy comedy from the 1920s, but rather slapstick was Plymouth's name and Dodge's for the transmission shifter on the floor. Just slap it and go. Standard Cuda steering looks like an exotic piece. It's aluminum for sure. And the telescoping steering column, another federally mandated safety item right there to prevent chest injuries and impacts. Just wear your seatbelts, folks. Aftermarket tack and gauges here for temperature and voltage and oil pressure. So again, interesting insides. And again, the back seat on this is pretty compact. I'm 6'1". A long ride in one of these things wouldn't be very comfortable for me. Again, the Challenger with 2 inches of more wheelbase would be slightly less uncomfortable. The same thing holds true with modern Challenger. They're not really a 4-person car. You can sit in the back of one of those for short periods. Same thing with the original E-body. It was compact, and that was about the long hood, short deck treatment, which was in vogue, starting with the 1964.5 Mustang, which was the first pony car. And back here we have an aftermarket spoiler. It looks kind of like a Cuda, an AAR Cuda sort of effect right here. And of course the Cuda has the Cuda logo right there. And again, it's a BS23 car. It's actually a Cuda 340. And here's that little filler panel right here. You can kind of see on the sides. This is actually a plastic item. Yes, right here. It's meant to deform and be compressible in the event you have a half mile, a tiny love tap at the back of the car. It's not going to do much to, take energy out of the crash. But with that said, that was a federally mandated item right there. So with that said, this is the story on this work in process. It's being improved. But again, to learn more about this car, go to the High-Octane Classics website and check out the photo gallery.